Hi, this video is part of my complete Docker and Kubernetes course. The link is in the description of the video, so make sure to give a thumbs up, and if you don't want to miss any updates, subscribe to the channel. That being said, let's get started. Hello and welcome back. Let's continue with the implementation here of our routes for handling notebooks. Let's now move on to retrieving a single notebook. This route will be very similar to the one above, so I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. And instead of directly retrieving all of the notebooks here, we're just going to extract the ID from our request.parameters or request.params here. And then we can say find by ID like so, and we can pass the ID here. This will retrieve a single notebook. So now we could say if not notebook, so if this is not defined, and the find by ID will return a falsy value in case the document is not found with this ID here. So we can rest assured that if notebook has either null or undefined, then it was not found. We can then say if not notebook, we're going to return a status of 404. And then we'll simply send the JSON body here or the JSON object with an error of notebook not found. If the notebook was found, then we will return once again status of 200, and the data here will just be notebook. Let's save this. Let's come back to Postman and let's test whether this is working. In Postman, we can take the ID of the notebook we have just created. So let's copy this ID here. And now let's send a request to the get endpoint API notebooks, and then let's paste the ID here. Let's send this, and the moment we do that, we can confirm that we get something back. We can also try to pass an invalid or a non-existing ID here. And I'm curious whether Mongoose will actually process this or whether it will throw an error. If we were to send this here, perfect. Exactly, this is what I was expecting. Mongoose tries to convert this into an object ID. And if it doesn't manage to do so, then it actually throws an error here. And this is coming from our catch block inside of our route handler. From the user perspective, from the client's perspective, this is really a very bad message. We don't like that. We don't really want to expose this kind of information. For the client's perspective, we should just inform, hey, this is not really a valid, or let's say this ID was not found in a database, right? So if it cannot be cast to object ID, it simply means there is no object in a database with this ID. So instead of sending a 500 internal server error and a very ugly response here, let's add a quick check in our route before we actually try to find the notebook by ID here. Let's import once again, so const mongoose is equal to require mongoose. And now we're going to use a feature or one of the methods of Mongoose here to validate the ID that we are receiving. After we receive the ID, we can simply say if not mongoose dot types dot object ID dot is valid, and then we can pass the ID here. So if the received ID is not valid, then we're just going to return the exact same error message. We're going to return response status 404 and just say, hey, this notebook was not found. If this is an invalid object ID, there cannot be any notebook with this ID in the database to begin with, because the ID is an object ID generated by Mongoose. Let's then save this and come back to Postman to verify that we managed to provide a better user experience here for our API consumers. In Postman, let's then send this here, and now we start seeing that we actually get an error here, notebook not found. We can also say ABC, for example, here, and we get once again notebook not found. If we were to now return to the valid notebook here, we can send this and we will get the notebook back. And if we were to pass, let's say here, a valid object ID, so I'm just going to change from A to B here. This is a hexadecimal string, and that's why changing from A to B is a valid change here, but this is a non-existent ID. If we were to just send this here, then we will also get a notebook not found. Awesome. Let's then come back to the IDE here and let's complete both the put and the delete methods. In the put method, we would like to update a notebook that is already existing with this ID here. So let's do once again try, and then we'll simply say here const name and description will be equal to our request.body. So remember, we are trying to update a notebook. That means that we should allow our users to provide the new information here in the request.body. We also would like to have a catch statement here for our error, and then we'll simply send back response.status.error like so. Great. We also would like to validate our ID. So let's do the same code here, and I do apologize for the duplication. I know that there are much better ways to go around it. So you could also try to tackle this on your own, how we can extract this into a validation function. But for me here, I'm just gonna leave this in the body of our route handler. So we're just gonna say const notebook is equal to await notebook dot find by ID and update here. And then in this function, we would then like to first pass the ID that we have already validated. We then would like to pass the new information here. So that's going to be both the name and the description. And then we would like to return here the new object. So we're going to mark new to true. So that notebook contains the data of the updated object, or it contains the updated data instead of the old data. Let's then once again check here if no notebook. We're just going to return a 404 as well. So let's just mark this here. Return 404. Otherwise, we will just return response.json, and then the data here will be our notebook object. For the delete method, the logic will be very similar. So I'm just going to copy this whole code here, and let's add inside of the body of our delete function. Let's just save this so it formats it better. But now we don't have name and description. We do still have the validation of the ID. And then instead of having find by ID and update, we will have find by ID and delete like so. And then we don't have any additional parameters or arguments except the ID of the notebook we wish to delete. We will also have the if not notebook here, then we'll just return this status, and then we're just going to return the response here. Let's then save this code and let's jump into Postman to test our new endpoints. In Postman, let's once again try to send here. Remember, we changed from A to B, so now you don't need to memorize this. Let's just get all the notebooks. Let's copy the ID here. Let's paste it here. Let's confirm that we can get the notebook here. And now let's update. Let's send a put request, and we will simply say here description updated. So updated description like so. Let's send this request, and then the moment we do that, we get once again a 200 response here with the updated description. That's awesome. So the put method is working. If we send an invalid ID, so let's just send an invalid ID here, we just get a notebook not found as expected. That's great. And now we can also test that with the delete method. Let's send the delete method with an invalid ID, notebook not found. And then if we were to send with a valid ID, then we will get the data back here that was deleted. Maybe we can actually improve on this, because one of the conventions is to just send a 204 instead of 200. So let's just do that. I just want to confirm that once we try to get this notebook here by ID, we actually start getting a notebook not found. And when we get all the notebooks, our notebook is gone. So the delete method is working. It is working as expected. Just instead of sending the data here, we will send a status of 204 if the operation was successful. Perfect. Congratulations on completing this small API for handling notebooks. Let's take a short break and come back in the next lecture.